Thank you. So just some quick introductions. So my name is Cheryl Obiakpenny. I'm the Programs and Partnership Manager at Coding Black Females. Just some information, a little bit about Coding Black Females if you don't already know about us. We were established in 2017 to address the underrepresentation of Black women in software development and other tech roles. So since 2017, we've grown. We are currently probably between 6,000, I'm going to say maybe 7,000 members across the globe. So we have, most of our members are based in the UK, but we have a growing population membership in the US, Canada, in West Africa, and in East Africa. We've got loads and loads of people signing up to be members from Kenya, Rwanda, and Uganda. So yes, our population is growing considerably in East Africa and some parts of West Africa, of course. We mainly engage with our members through a variety of events such as these. We offer training opportunities, we offer mentoring programs, we offer free courses, free online courses. Yeah, we offer loads. We work with a range of partners to offer all these things. So a lot of our work couldn't be done without our wonderful partners, especially our corporate partners, such as PlayStation London Studio, who are sponsoring and running the event today. So give me a second. So like I said, the event today is to learn about PlayStation London Studio, how it is what the different roles are within the organization, what it's like to work with them, what it's like to work within the team. I'm going to pass on to Louise, who's a technical producer at London Studios, PlayStation London Studios, and she's going to chair the sessions today. Louise, are you there?
Hello. Yes. Can you hear and see me?
Yes, I can hear and see you. Can anyone else?
Excellent. I think there's some people saying in the chat that they can't see the slides.
Oh, really? Okay. Give me a second. I will stop sharing and then try again.
Okay.
Let's try that again. How about now? Ooh. I will try again.
Oh, I can see it now.
Yes.
Yay.
Yay.
Okay, great. Okay. So I'll pass on to Louise to chair the session.
Hello. It's really, really nice, really exciting to be here. I'm going to just give a really brief overview into London Studio and also kind of start introducing the excellent speakers that we have talking today. So we're PlayStation London Studio. We've been around for the past 20 years working on games that are really innovative, like at their core is something that we're really proud of is cutting edge games technology. We are very often the team to get the hands-on PlayStation technology stuff for the first time, which is really cool. We get to kind of work on fresh things and push the boundaries. We're a first party PlayStation studio, which means we only make games for PlayStation. And we kind of fall under the umbrella of the PlayStation Studios family, which has got a lot of other like sister studios, we call them, in there as well. So people you might have heard of like Naughty Dog and Insomniac, which is a really like cool support system as well for us people we can talk to and get help where we need it. Currently, we're working on a brand new online multiplayer game. We're super excited about it. It's a completely brand new IP, making a whole new world and characters. However, I can't say any more than that, but all I can assure you, it's a really good time to be working at PlayStation London Studio. There's a real buzz, creativity, and it's really exciting sort of seeing all the new developments that happen live. So yeah, that's London Studio. So I think we go to the next slide if that's cool. No, I don't know how to get to the next slide.
Has it not moved on?
No, it still says PlayStation London Studio.
Okay, give me a second.
Okay.
Okay. Is that working now?
No, I can just see a black slide, like same issue as before. Now I can see the Coding Black Females logo.
No, that's me. Give me a second. I'm trying to share the slide.
Yes.
Yes, all working now.
Brilliant. Okay. First up, we have Bruno. So I'm going to hand over to Bruno to introduce himself because he will do a far better job than I will. So Bruno, take it away.
Thank you. So I'm Bruno Ribeiro. I'm the technical director at London Studio. I joined the studio 10 years ago as a graphics programmer, and then I kind of worked myself up to this role. And a technical director basically oversees the tech department, so all the programming effort, and in our case also includes technical art, technical animation, but overall everyone working on foundational technology and tools for the rest of the studio to build the game against. And yeah, and I also work very closely with the studio heads and the other department directors to ensure that we set out the goals for the studio and identify risks, mitigations, and generally just try to keep the whole thing rolling. Yeah, that's me.
Thank you very much. And then for the next slide, we'll reveal who the next intro is. It's Robin. Go ahead, Robin.
Hello, my name is Robin Deitch. I have an amazing job which is called Art Technology Lead in the studio, which is part of the technical art family of jobs, which may or may not be familiar to other people from other industries. It's kind of quite unique for games and film and that kind of thing. Yeah, as it says there, ultimately my job is about ensuring that we end up with really good looking stuff in our game that performs really, really well and very quickly. I could go on about this job for ages. I'm incredibly passionate about what it is. Louise, tell me to stop whenever you want. But as a really quick introduction to anyone who doesn't know what technical art means, I think we'll talk a bit later about the different people involved in making games. But for me, at a very high level, we have some pretty much splits between very technical people and very creative people. And if you ever asked a designer to check their files into Git or asked a dev to mock up their idea in Photoshop, it's quite clear that that there's sometimes a bit of a bashing of heads to get people on the same page. And it's kind of compounded in games, I guess, because we usually try to push the hardware, in our case, the PlayStation 5, to its limits, which kind of makes a tight coupling between code and art and game design, because we have to get artwork to kind of work in tandem with the code that draws this artwork. So we end up having to tie all these different kind of right brain people and left brain people together. And my team functions as a kind of glue or connective tissue between them. And that's why I love it so much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Can we go move on to the next person, please? Ooh, that was too quick. There we go. Angie.
Hey, nice to see you all here. I'm Angelina, and I am a graphics programmer at London Studio. Graphics programming is kind of self-explanatory, but it involves making our game look as visually stunning as possible whilst maintaining really fast, optimized code to do so. And that involves talking and liaising with like the art team and the design team to make sure that they can fully realize what they want within our game and pushing the technology as hard as we can.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And then last but not least, we have Patrick.
Thank you. So I'm Patrick Agostaro. I'm the principal technical artist. So pretty much what Robin was saying about tech art, I am part of that family of game development. So as it kind of says there in my introduction, I work pretty much between artists and programmers to make sure we have the technology, the tools, and all of the pipelines that we need to make beautiful art and make sure that the artists can deliver their vision, and at the same time, our game actually runs at the speed it has to run. So we basically live in that middle ground between artistic and technology. And yeah, I've been here for almost 4 years now, and I really enjoy it.
Brilliant. Excellent. So I think what we're going to do now is we're going to just very briefly talk about the different types of roles that make up a game studio to give you all a really good context of how a game studio fits together, the different people that work in it, the different roles available, because we might potentially just start to use some terminology that isn't very familiar. So I'm going to hand over to Robin to cover this one. He's kindly volunteered. So go ahead, Rob.
It's a bit unprepared, so everyone else, please jump in when I forget your discipline. But again, like going back to a very high level, you know, I'd say we've got three main areas of people that make up a game team, and lots of people in each of those buckets, and those would be creative, tech, and production. So in the creative side of things, that covers game designers, artists of 100 different flavors, 3D artists, 2D artists, VFX artists, UI, UX artists, audio people, and also a massively important side, marketing for the game, people who drive the direction that the whole game goes in. On the tech side, again, we have coders of almost every flavor you can imagine, network experts, AI people, gameplay programmers, graphics engineers like Angie, build engineers, tool programmers, dev support, or, you know, the many names for dev support. We integrate them into everything we do, which is great. And production, there is, you know, there again, many kinds of people make up that side of things as well. So there's a whole load of different disciplines, different technologies, yeah, different tools, different platforms, a whole big mix of stuff goes into making up a game these days. The good news is that you don't have to have all of those people. You can make games yourself today. If you have a laptop, that's fantastic. If you've got pen and paper, you're good to go as well. And it's only really when you get to the scale and the ambition of things like PlayStation London Studio that you start to need these more and more specific disciplines. I think there's a lot more to say about the different kinds of developers that are involved. The different languages we use. Again, you know, some people on the team spend the whole day in Python. There's a lot of C++ coders, many of those. C# is very big for tools as well, and you know, there's lots of other tools and tech involved as well. It's very interesting. I think there's a lot of ways to plug in, whether it's stuff that runs off the final CD. It's not really a CD these days, or stuff that's used in the production of the game itself. Yeah, there's a lot to it. In terms of team sizes, I think, you know, as I say, you can start with one person. If you're creating something like Assassin's Creed, you're probably pushing 1,000 people, sometimes 1,500 people involved over 4 or 5 years to bring something like that to fruition, and everything in between. Is there anything that I've missed particularly, Bruno?
I think you covered it pretty well. I would say that, you know, even within production, you have kind of different specialties in a way. Louise being our key technical producer, she's kind of overseeing she's kind of wrangling all of the programmers, and we also, on the dev support side, the dev support, it's not a super clear term, but they basically encompass not only testing the game and the tools that we make, but also providing frontline support for developers and for even things like play tests and things like that. So they're running a lot of these streams in the background, without which the whole thing would frankly fall apart if we didn't have them watching over us. So yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I think what's really wonderful about working in games, and I say this a lot, is it's an amalgamation of lots of different disciplines. You've got art, you've got design, you've got project managers, producers, and you've got programming. It's exciting. Thank you very much, Robin and Bruno. So now we're going to talk a little bit about. Oh, if can you move on to the next slide, if that's okay. Thanks. I don't know if it's going to work. I mean, I know what the topic is, so we could just start without looking at the slide. Oh no, here we go.
I'm sorry to say it's a black slide.
It is a black slide.
Give me a second.
Thank you.
I don't know what's happening. Nothing?
Yeah, black slide again.
Oh, we've got it.
Hey, it's back.
Fantastic. Cool. So yeah, we're going to talk about how you can get into game development. Everyone's going to talk for a little bit about their journey. So I'm going to pick Patrick to begin. That's okay, Patrick. And then we'll just go around.
Sure. So as I mentioned, I'm a technical artist. So my journey into game development actually starts with art and not with programming. So I'm from Italy. That's where I've studied all of this. And after high school, which in my country I did something along the line of advertisement. After high school, I decided to take a small course for advanced digital art. It was called, so 2D and 3D art, because there's not much regarding game development in my country, unfortunately. So that's one of the few things I could take. And thanks to that, I learned more about art and video games in general. And that led me to meet a lot of people. And thanks to meeting all these people, one of my teachers actually then hired me after the 2 years course. And that was a really lucky thing to happen. But thanks to that, I was able to start working in the industry in another city, so running back and forth. And basically, thanks to that, I put my foot in the industry, started working as an artist, quickly understood that I was much more technically focused than all of my artist peers. And slowly I started becoming more and more of a tech artist, started working more on code and technology and how do we do things rather than actually making the beautiful art that other people were making. And one thing after the other, jumped company, and one after the other, it led me here to London and to Sony, which is really nice journey.
Nice. Thank you so much. Angie, how about you?
On my side, I went a more traditional route. So well, first I started off doing a degree I didn't really want to do, but that gave me excellent mathematical background. And then I re-rolled through clearing on a games development course in the UK, and then learnt programming on the fly, which was interesting and challenging, but I got there in the end. And alongside doing that, I sort of chased every opportunity to do with outreach and networking, like industry meetup and lunches and that sort of thing. And that eventually led me to very fortunately be able to showcase some of my work to some people already in the industry. And essentially from that interaction, that landed a few interview offers, and yeah, from there I got into game dev.
Wonderful. Thanks. Bruno?
Hello. I had a bit of a cliche thing of, I always kind of knew that I wanted to work in game development. And so I kind of tried my best to just pick whatever path would get me there, preferably quick. And so, yeah, I got into programming really early. And then when I got to uni, I got into a computer science degree that I wasn't really that excited about, to be honest. And halfway through, I met some like-minded friends, and we kind of just bailed out and just created our own little independent team at the time back in Portugal. So that was exciting. I wouldn't necessarily recommend to everyone to just bail out of uni, but it didn't work out badly at the end. And yeah, we had a good progression from there. I was like the only programmer for a long time, and eventually I tried to see if I could get somewhere else than not just a company that I helped create. And I joined London Studio like 10 years ago. It was, in a way, it was the first job I applied to. But yeah, that's kind of it, short.
First job. Incredible. Good work. Robin?
So I think I decided that I wanted to work in games when I was about 6, I think. It was so blindingly obvious that this was the thing I wanted to do. It's all I could dream of for years and years and years. I kind of forgot about it as a teenager, and kind of carried on about my business, not really knowing what to do. I started a degree in maths, which I didn't really enjoy. And then kind of switched to another degree in architecture. And part of the way through that degree, I saw Tomb Raider running on a PS1. And something clicked in my head, and I remembered, oh yeah, that's right, that's what I was going to do. And that's kind of what happened, really. I finished my degree in architecture and did my final year project as a Half-Life level, which was universally hated by all of the instructors, but I loved it. And also got me a job as an environment artist in a small studio in Brighton, which doesn't exist anymore, sadly. And hopped around from studio to studio, learning loads every time about what it takes to make a game. The different skills that are needed, and the holes that normally exist in teams. And eventually, in about 2006 or 7, I think that sort of approach to finding a role in a team turned into a thing that people call technical artist. And that's sort of been what I've done ever since, really. So yeah, I bounced from company to company, project to project. I ran an art production company for quite a few years. And yeah, I'm now very, very, very happy to be working in this team on this amazing project.
Excellent. kind of a spin-off question, I think, as well on this topic. Is anyone able to talk about transferable skills? So like something that you've learned elsewhere that you could bring into a game dev environment. Anyone got any kind of thoughts on that on the panel?
I mean, I can talk about kind of skills that are useful from any direction really to bring to game studio. I think curiosity is the number one thing that I bias towards when trying to find people to add to the team. Trying to encourage my team to develop that skill. Curiosity can come from anywhere really. It's not it's a soft skill rather than hard skill. Obviously, there's lots of technical stuff you can be doing in any kind of game studio. So I think the rule that we normally have is that you can teach a language or you can teach a skill, but it's really a mindset that we want to see for people joining. So I think that kind of curiosity and that sort of wanting to try stuff and not worrying too much about kind of whether it blows up is be the most useful skill, I think, to develop outside if you're hoping for a career in games.
Yeah, on that note, I'm going to say from my personal experience, for example, I mentioned I did my high school journey was in advertisement and like graphics design and the sort. And I'm not using any of that like graphic design knowledge anymore. But what I did do in that school was that because my teacher were all older than me, they didn't really know how to use like Photoshop or stuff like that well, and that gave me the boost to try out things for myself. And I actually like learned how to like discover things more and like be autonomous in like using something I don't know. How do I discover this? How do I do this even if I have no idea what I'm doing? And like that type of curiosity, as Robin was mentioning, and like problem solving and creative problem solving, you can say like it's a good transferable skill.
Brilliant. I guess it goes back to Angie teaching herself how to code as well, which I am extremely jealous of her ability to do that. Great. Can we have sorry, go on, Bruno.
I was just going to mention something that obviously we were talking about games development as a just up and making a game, but a large portion of our engineering team, for example, is actually working on our tools, and there's a lot of transferable skills there in a number of areas. For example, our build team, the problems they face are not too dissimilar from most of the problems that any other big software development effort would have. And our tools team is, again, there's a lot of things that are done in the context of game development, but a lot of it is like UI development and a number of other fields that if you've done elsewhere, there's a lot that you can bring across, even if you haven't made a game before.
Brilliant. Thank you. Can we move to the next slide, if that's all right? Excellent. So sort of a spin-off question. So traditionally, a route into game development is to take a degree of some sort, a game dev degree usually. But however, Robin and Patrick have both got really interesting journeys about how they got into games. So I'm going to hand over to Patrick again to give us a little bit more detail into that, if that's all right, mate.
Sounds good. So yeah, I didn't mention that I did want to make video games from when I was very young, not as young as Robin, but when I was around, I think 12, I had to decide what to do for high school because I could go for a very scientific one, very artistic one, whatever, and I wasn't really sure. And I started realizing that yes, what's my interest, what am I good at? And after a while I realized that okay, making computer art is my thing. I want to do that. And then I realized I love video games. Like I want to make those things. I want to be able to make those awesome experiences I had like on my own or like with other people. That's how I started my journey. And as I mentioned, I went to this advertising school, which I did for 4 years in high school. And it was really harder sometimes because I knew I wanted to make video games, but I couldn't do it yet. And after that, I was lucky to find this course because unfortunately no university was there at the time in Italy to actually get a degree in game development. And I knew I didn't want to be a programmer. At the time, I was very much against being a programmer. So I went straight down into the artistic path, did this course for 2 years where I learned how to draw and how to model in 3D. And then slowly I started doing more and more technical things, and I started understanding that maybe I didn't want to be a programmer, but I do like programming, and I can do it. I can do technical things. So I started focusing more on that side of game development rather than making nice sculptures and nice, beautiful drawings or anything else. And yeah, that was kind of my journey into programming, from saying I don't want to program into that. And I also did a lot of like HTML and website development stuff when I was younger. And yeah, I always struggle with this of like, I like it, but I don't like it because I don't want to be a programmer. And then I realized, that's the path that I want to be in. It's in the middle.
What was, just out of interest, what was it that you thought you didn't like about programming? Like, where was the resistance coming from?
I'm not sure, actually. It was just an internal thing. I don't know if it's because I wanted to make beautiful art that I was like, I don't want to do this coding thing in the back. I want to do the beautiful stuff in the front. But yeah, I realized that I could make that happen even by programming at the end of the day. It's not a mutually exclusive thing. So it was an interesting self-discovery.
I like it. Thanks. Robin, do you have anything to add about your journey?
Yeah, so I mentioned it started off with a degree in maths and then a change to a degree in architecture, which kind of seems a bit incongruous, really. But actually, given what I ended up kind of doing, which is exactly the mix of tech and creativity, it feels like the perfect thing with hindsight. I think in terms of like other people's routes in, there's a lot of people that I've met over the years who have autodidacting, self-taught in whichever area they've joined the games industry. And it's funny because if you teach yourself from scratch to be an artist or a coder or whatever, I certainly struggle with it. I think a lot of other people I've met struggle with a similar thing, which is I would never kind of dare call myself a programmer. I can program a bit, but I'd never say, yeah, I'm a programmer, that's what I do. And in some ways that kind of, I don't want to call it an imposter syndrome, but that sort of flexibility perhaps of, you can be lots of different things, right? You can be interested in lots of different areas, and you can skill up in lots of different areas. You can keep all of those plates spinning at once. Is probably the kind of, I don't know, the nice result of my route into it, I think. In terms of like, it's interesting hearing, Patrick, what you're saying about what you learned during the degree. I'd say a very similar thing. What the real skills that I got from an architecture degree, and it probably applies to almost any route that you take, any sort of higher education, really, is about learning how to self-edit, how to have an idea and not become too precious with it, how to iterate on things without getting wedded to a particular outcome, and how to kind of put stuff out there and have people critique it. All of these are sort of essential skills, really, for a creative industry, but also, to be honest, for sort of adult life, really, it turns out. It's quite good to be able to do a few steps of that yourself before before showing stuff to people. So yeah, there was a lot that came from that degree that I use to this day, really, in terms of kind of pushing ideas forwards. Yeah.
Nice. For the people who I guess did like extracurriculars, like self-taught stuff, I've got a follow-up question. How did you like make time? If you were doing a degree, did you have to do extra stuff while you're doing the degree, or were you unemployed and were you like teaching yourself during that time? Or how did that work out for you? Was it difficult, basically?
You want to go, Angie, or should I go?
Sure. basically, yeah, it was a lot of hard work juggling a degree and finding the time for all this extra stuff. And then also, I had this habit of choosing everything and not. Sometimes prioritizing was super, super hard, but my bottom line was just get the degree done and then everything else comes after that. So I had not too much of a social life, admittedly, for 3 years, 4 years. Not sure what my takeaway from that would be, really, other than just keep at it, I guess.
Yeah.
Nice. Patrick's
Yeah.
just put something really good in the chat if you want to embellish.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I was just mentioning, I saw a lot of questions about what's a good resource for getting into the gaming industry, and I always want to recommend people to go to game jams or participate in game jams if you want to see what game development is about, because that's literally a game development experience concentrated in either 2 or 3 days or a week, depending on the event. And you know, it's really, really an amazing experience if you want to see what making a game is all about. You might want to like at least know how to do one thing first. Maybe you know how to draw, or maybe you know how to model something in 3D, just so you can actually help the team and not just stare at everyone asking what they're doing. But yeah, it's a really, really good thing to do if you want to have that experience. But yeah.
You
Yeah,
joke, but I went to a game jam as a producer and did stare at people just doing things. But I also made everyone go home at 5 o'clock and not work hard too hard.
That's a good thing. Yeah. Definitely. But yeah, I also wanted to like remark the point that Angie was making about just keep at it when you're learning on your own. I learned coding on my own because I never went to a coding school, as I mentioned. So again, I started with web development, which you could consider coding or not coding, depending on which part of it you're looking at. So starting with something small and simple, and then working your way, through bigger challenges is a good way to improve on your own. But yeah, it's gonna be a hard journey because you don't have a teacher, you don't have a guide. So just try to reach out to people online that might help you. Try to reach out to friends or anyone that can maybe give you a guide, and try to keep at doing what you love.
Excellent. All right. So my next question is really very broad, and it's about what goes into making a great game. So I'm going to hand over to Bruno because I think he's not said anything for a little while. So Bruno, just to put you on the spot, what goes into making a great game? You're welcome.
Yeah. I would say that the number one thing is really iteration, like lots of it. Generally, you come in and you have an idea for a game, or a bunch of people have an idea for a game. Turns out whatever you had on that paper day one is probably not that good. And you're going to have to just keep on it and keep trying it, changing it. And the same thing applies for how the game plays, feels, how the game looks, the technology driving it, the tools you're using, just constantly redoing everything until you're happy with it, until you've polished it enough. And it's interesting because a few years ago, that meant that everything, and we had producers kind of help us through that journey, but we had to time box this effort within the schedule we had and the budget we had to make the game. And that was it. And that was your shot at polishing it to perfection. And then it's on a disk and that is burned forever. And now we're more and more seeing this transition to early access projects and live service projects where what gets released is a first go at it, sometimes pretty rough even, and then it's iterated in public in front of everyone else with feedback from the actual people playing it. And it can turn ugly because people might disengage from it straight away because of how rough it is, or you might just over time create something that you've never been able to create if you had just tried to restrict yourself to that siloed development environment. So yeah, that's my answer. Iteration.
Really great points. As a producer, I approve this message. Brilliant. Robin, how about you? What do you think goes into making a really great game?
Like that's the number one thing. Iteration is true. Having a space to iterate, which kind of has another implication as well about not setting your sights too high, and kind of it's just edit, funnel it down to the fun thing, you know, and then you can work on that and make that really cool. I'll also, you know, make the really important point: happy people make good games. Unhappy people don't make good games. So that's a very critical point, making sure everyone's doing stuff they enjoy, stuff they're interested in, learning more stuff all the time. Yeah, that's another important component.
Excellent. Angie?
All excellent points so far. I think for me, having the creative freedom to try out new things and sort of like break the mold with what you're trying to do instead of just following like perhaps certain trends or whatever. I think that's super important because then you're bringing forward something that someone's never seen before, which is always super exciting to work on.
Patrick?
Yeah. So what everyone said basically, because really good points. But yeah, I guess with happy people is like also having that. I don't want to say passion because that's not the right word because it gets misused a lot. But like having a project or something that people want to work on is also a really nice boost, especially if you're a smaller team. Like, you know, forcing someone to work on something they don't like, it's not going to end up too well. So that goes a long way sometimes.
Brilliant. So spin-off question as well. What's an example of a game that you think is really successful in its vision? Obviously one that's released. So I'm not necessarily your favorite game because you might not think it's your favorite, but you might still think it's fantastic. Angie.
Oh, wow, starting with me first. No pressure. For me, I really loved the game Control. I thought the graphics were incredible and there were a lot of really cool techniques that they used. That it just, I think I binged the whole game in like 2 days because I just couldn't put it down. Yeah, really, really visually interesting game that I absolutely adore.
Brilliant. I had to put it on easy mode. I think there's like a survival mode, isn't there, where you can't die because it's quite a challenging game. Bruno, how about you? What do you think is a really successful game?
Oh, that's a tricky one. You're putting me on the spot. But you said not to focus on stuff we like, so I'm gonna try and get away from the obvious choices there. But something I also like, but using a very old reference, but I would say that the first Super Mario game is a good example of just nailing a lot of the things you set out to do in terms of demonstrating the platform and nailing the gameplay, and even it's used as a case study for many reasons. But even the way the game teaches itself to the user without the tutorial or anything like that, like the first level is like this perfect game design example of just throwing you in and teaching you as you go. You just press buttons and you figure out what the game does, and it's definitely the kind of stuff that I think a lot of modern games could learn from in terms of not hand-holding people and throwing half an hour of exposition on you first time. Yeah,
it's like the feeling of discovery, isn't it, with some games, like reigniting that childhood, like, what is this, how do I do it kind of feeling, which is really good. Robin.
So when you said, you know, examples of games, my mind went completely blank and I couldn't think of a single game at all that I've ever played or seen. But thankfully a couple of minutes is a bit of time. So for me, I picked the Batman games, the Rocksteady Batman games, which, you know, Bruno can take some high fives for. To me, that they were such an immersive. I was Batman playing those games, which is another thing I always wanted to do apart from make games. I always wanted to be Batman, and I was playing those. So yeah, I think that's incredibly successful. sucking you into this world and keeping you there while you fly around bashing baddies with your big shoes. But also, yeah, and then I remember another one, Stray, which came out recently, which is a game about being a cat, which is probably the opposite experience to running around Arkham City bashing things, and I'd highly recommend it. Again, it's a wonderful little sci-fi-ish story, really, that reminded me a lot of old point-and-click games from the 90s. In its kind of pacing and the setting, the beautiful locations in it. So yeah, very, very successful. And you get to stroke the cat, much like you're doing, Louise.
That's fantastic. Patrick?
So staying on a small game and latching to the topic of discovery that Bruno mentioned, I'm going to mention Tunic, which is a small little game made by basically one developer and a few other people helping. And yeah, they were able to get that vision and release this game after, I think, 7 years of development. So it is possible to make a game on your own. It takes a lot of effort, as you can see, but it nails what it tries to do, and it's a really amazing experience. And you know, if you are up for exploration and discovery and mystery, go get it. You're a little fox with a little sword that tries to be, you know, a little badass. So if you like that, go check it out.
I'll add it to my ever-growing list. We've got about 10 minutes left before we go into the question section. So I'm going to ask and deep dive a little bit more into some of your careers in a sort of very specific way. So be prepared. So let's go for what is the biggest success that you've had in your career. And I'm going to go to Bruno first. Bruno, biggest success.
Can I go slightly off from what you said? Instead of saying it wasn't a commercial success, but the project I'm most proud of is a PS3 game I did as part of my old team back in Portugal. It's a game called Under Siege, like strategy game for the PS3, and we had 3 programmers in a very small art team as well, and we kind of pulled off, like, I think it took us around 3 years to make the game. It was our first PS3 game. We came off of doing Nintendo DS titles. It was a huge challenge, but to this day I'm still super proud of what we achieved. Again, it didn't sell that much, but you know, there was a lot of things happening at the time. But yeah, that was the thing that I did most, if not all, of the graphics programming on that. The AI had to pitch in on some of the networking at times, and I wrote the script for the game too. So
is it still available?
if you can find the PS3, it's probably still available on the PSN to buy right now. It's a PS3 exclusive, so but yeah.
Thanks so much. Angie.
Sure. I think for me, it goes back to university and having started day one with 0 programming background and essentially coming from maths and being like, oh, this will be logical, it's fine, right? And then I got object-oriented programming thrown at me and I was like, oh, okay, maybe not. And I chose something that would really, really push my technical ability as like a final year project. So I wanted to make a GPU-focused, multi-threaded fluid simulation. And they don't really work until it's right. So the debugging was terrible. It was just this horrible mess for 9 months. And then I think it was like, I don't know, a day before the deadline, it actually ran and worked, which was excellent. And I was very, very relieved. But that sort of prepares you for a lot of things where things don't always work out as you think they're going to work out. And it can be a lot of hard work to get there. But yeah, perseverance and eventually compilation.
Lovely. I bet it was gorgeous as well, the fluid sim. I bet it was really pretty.
Oh no.
Oh, well, in my mind. Patrick, how about you?
So I guess I have two different most like moments in my life. One was at the beginning of my career. Because we were such a small studio, I wasn't just a tech artist, I was an artist, a tech artist, and a game designer all thrown in because we just didn't have anyone else doing anything. And that made me work on a lot of things, and I was really happy with the project we were working on. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to actually see it to the end because I moved to another company, but it was really nice to see all of that come into fruition when you have so much hands everywhere on a project, and also game design and all of that. It's really a different feeling, let's say, than just working on a specific part. And then my second moment would be now here in London studio. When I came in, I've had a task which was, oh, we have this tool, a material editor, it doesn't really work well for us. Can you maybe fix it up a bit? And I said, why don't I just remake the whole thing? And while I made it, remake also a VFX editor and add a bunch of stuff on top of that. And, it's kind of a risky thing to do because we were throwing out a lot of stuff we had, and I had to reinvent the wheel, you can say, for a lot of things. But I'm really happy with the fact that it worked. And years later, we do have apps working and functioning, hopefully, if they didn't crash tonight. And that was really a big achievement for me.
Oh, lovely. And how to follow that, Robin? Go ahead.
Patrick, it is a really big achievement, by the way.
Yeah, it's huge.
But it really is. You've spun something amazing out of thin air. Before kind of saying that, I just want to pick up on something Angie said, actually. I think most programmers probably have this wonderful, they get to experience this amazing, like 0 to 1 moment quite often, actually, where you go from something that doesn't work and you don't really understand why it doesn't work and you're completely lost, and then you crack it, and now you've got this amazing working thing and you feel like a magician. I think we kind of, luckily, that's a sort of mini success that we have almost every day, right? It's what keeps a lot of people going, I think. In terms of like personal success, I think it's got to be seeing the first game that I ever worked on the shelf in HMV in 2002. And feeling incredibly proud of all the long nights that went into it, and then seeing it there, and moving the boxes to the front and putting quite a few more of them over the shelves so people could see it. That's a wonderful feeling, which is not, it's not quite the same these days because box product is not really the thing so much, but it's still, I think our modern equivalent is probably checking the analytics on launch day and seeing the number go up and then go up a lot more, which is still that thrill, really.
Agreed. Excellent. Cheryl, I think are we ready for questions now, if that's cool?
Yes, we've got some questions. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm not sharing anything, so you should be able to hear me. Okay, we have some of them were answered in the chat, but in case people missed the chat, someone asked, can you recommend any resources, articles, or community groups for those interested in getting into the gaming tech industry? Recommend any resources or articles or community groups? I think, was it Patrick that mentioned some?
Yes, I think I elaborated on it before, but just to reiterate, go to a game jam if you really want to experience what game development is. Doesn't really matter programming or not programming, just doesn't matter, just go to a game jam and see what you can come up with there. Join a group. I did one when I was with other 8 people I have never met in my life, and we won. So it can be a really rewarding experience, and do it. It's really nice.
There's I would add that there's like Robin mentioned before, game development's pretty accessible right now, especially for new starters. There's a wealth of information and a wealth of free tools out there, and things like Unity, Unreal, Godot. There's kind of all kinds of flavors of things. All of them
Yeah, I will add to that. If you want some inspiration, there's a lot of YouTubers or streamers or whatever channels that do this, and they're like either solo developers or small developers that they share their progress and their development and how they work with stuff, what engine they're using, how do they do this. Don't feel too discouraged by the fact that they of course cut the best part of everything they do. So, you know, it's still a video, it has to be engaging. So it's not going to be so amazing when you do it, but it could be an inspiring thing to see someone work out their game and how they're approaching problems and like what they went through and, you know, what went into their choices.
Excellent.
Great, thank you. I think you answered some of the other questions. Someone was asking about what tools you would recommend for beginners. So I heard C++, C#, joining community groups and going to those game jams. That's quite good. The next question, what does a typical week look like for a game developer?
Robin, this looks like one that you could you could answer.
I mean, for me, it's sort of 50% looking after my team, 50% talking to everyone else, and 50% playing with all our tech as well. But yeah, I'm not for a typical game dev. I mean, I think we sort of, in general, we like to focus on stuff, right? So we go through kind of periods of well, I think actually almost every games company I know about these days uses some form of you know, agile in some form. So a lot of people work in sprints these days, and so we have some kind of cadence, right, of talking about what the right thing to do is for the next couple of weeks, and then trying to do that thing, and you know, hopefully being left alone to do it, and get some focused time, and then kind of emerge at the end of it and see where we got to. In terms of like the kind of things we do, yeah, I mean, it really is sort of the dream, I guess. We literally sit in front of computers, kind of tapping away at code or clicking away in Maya or 3D Studio, and then literally look at our results in a game on the screen in front of us that we play. That might be on our PC, it might be on a development kit that's a sort of pretend souped up version of a PlayStation 5. Yeah, and we get to kind of play the thing we're making. And you know, sometimes it's a bit less magical than that, but other times it really is magical. You make a change and now the game is different and it's got your change in it. And yeah, it still kind of takes my breath away that we're allowed to do that, actually. Yeah, that's pretty much an overview, really. There's, you know, a lot of focus on communication between all the people involved. There's so many moving parts to a game. It's very rare that the thing you're doing exists entirely on its own. So we spend a lot of time on Slack. We chat a lot on video in this day and age. Hopefully we see each other some of the time, but yeah, we basically have this cycle of, you know, make change, players in the game. It's great.
Sort of goes back to the iteration point again, doesn't it, really?
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm not sure if
Thank
that's
you.
enough answer to that question. Sorry, there's probably a lot more detail that whoever asked the question would like to hear about.
That's all right. I'll move on to the next one. Is it possible to work? Is it possible to work at PlayStation without having any degree? Without having a degree?
I don't have a degree, for example.
Me neither.
Okay, great.
And tons of people at PlayStation don't.
The thing, the thing that I think Bruno mentioned, the portfolio thing, that's really important. That's what people look at. The fact that you have a degree doesn't really say too much about your actual gaming knowledge or experience or what you actually can do. So yeah, people do look at your portfolio, what you have, like if you have a blog that talks about technical stuff or things like that, but you know, it's all about what your role is. But yeah.
Could we expand a little bit on what a portfolio means for people who might not have heard that before?
Should I expand? Okay.
Anybody?
Well, I guess it depends again on the role you have. But let's say about coding in this case, as Bruno mentioned, having a small game or small project that you did is the most important thing, because finishing something is much harder, as we were saying, and it gives you a lot of experience in what it means to finish something, fixing bugs, you know, optimizing stuff, or like just making it work at the end. So that's one of the best things that can have a portfolio, and it doesn't have to be a specific format. Like it's not a PDF that you have to upload somewhere. It can be your website. It can be an ArtStation page if you're an artist. It can be a
GitHub account.
Exactly. It can be a GitHub account. It can be anything. If you have your repo somewhere, if you have, again, public projects that you worked on, if you have a blog that you write stuff about, if you have, I don't know, if you have any other examples, but that's the stuff I can think about. You know, if you have a little project that you work in school and you think it works well for your portfolio, that's also good. The main important rule is quality over quantity. Put the best things you have and not all of them. Pick the 2, 3 if you have those 2, 3 that are really good and the rest just you think doesn't work. Just put those 2, 3. Doesn't make it better to have more things. That's the main.
I would say the same applies for a CV as well. Don't list everything. Just list out the things that you feel are important both for the role and, you know, if it was a little thing that you did ages ago, it's probably not relevant anymore. But yeah, like Patrick said, later on in your career, you can point out, oh, I worked on this title or that title, and this is the thing I did. But to kickstart, and when you're not in the games industry yet, yeah, it's showing your knowledge through specific things that you might just, if you have code you can share, that goes a long way.
Not to say that, you know, a degree in games or anything games related is a negative at all. I mean, your exposure to different packages, different approaches, different people, different kinds of projects that you get through a degree is enormously valuable. So it's really, it's not a case of, you know, that's a negative. It's definitely a positive thing. I guess the point is with the portfolio and, you know, picking a couple of things that, you know, high quality. It's really about what you could talk to in an interview, because that's what we want to see, right? We want to. It's not really the work itself. We're not going to use the code that you wrote that you're showing us in GitHub. It's really what were you thinking? you know, when you did this, what was your approach? What were the things you learned? What didn't go well? What did go well? What would you do differently next time? So it's really that. And you know, if you came to us from, I don't know, you know, from you're working on GTA, it's the same thing. We'd still want to ask the same questions. What did you do? How did you do it? You know, what went well? What didn't go well? So yeah, you know, coming from a degree, fantastic. Coming from another AAA games company, it's the same approach. Looking at your, you know, your GitHub repo, it's the same thing.
Great. I think it leads on to this question. So what quality skill or project do you think made you stand out and get hired by the studio? Does anyone want to answer that?
Let's pick on Angie.
Oh, for real? Okay. Probably the project that I choose to use. But it wasn't the be all and end all. I did have also some game jams behind me that I'd done, so I could point out like this was my role, this is how we coordinated, and that kind of stuff. Yeah, not sure where to go with that really.
Patrick, how about you?
Sorry, trying to unmute. Yeah, I'm not sure. I guess probably the thing I was working on before London Studio, which was a procedural generation pipeline for Cloud Star Citizen, if you know what the game is. And I guess that is, you know, a project that was used for my you know, appreciation as a tech artist. But yeah, I guess for tech art is a bit different because we're few and far between usually. So you have a bit of like overall knowledge that gets like checked rather than just one project. But yeah, I guess that's the one that I would say.
Nice. I guess Bruno and Robin tend to be on the other side of the hiring process. So is there anything specific either of you would look for?
I think, you know, in my case, like for example, when I first applied at London Studio, and even before, it was pretty much about the work I could speak to, like Robin said. When I came to my interview at London Studio, I showed that game, PS3 game I had been working on, and I basically just went. I was really passionate about it, so I was, you know, yeah, ask me anything, and I just went through all of the bits that I had done and how I had done them and why, and yeah, that was the. Again, just reiterating a bit what Robin was saying, but it's very much about not a specific skill or anything that you might be bringing to the table. It's really being able to demonstrate that and being able to demonstrate your knowledge and your capability. We've had plenty of situations where people came in with heavy CVs from the industry, and when we start asking questions, things start falling apart and unraveling. And so, you know, it's really about showing that knowledge and that passion for what you do.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I'd add to that really would be it's partly about cultural fit as well, right? You know, you're joining a team of people who probably, you know, gone through some hard times and some good times, and you know, and there's always some kind of dynamics and involved in the studio culture and studio values and this kind of thing. So I think understanding what those are really, you know, what are the values of the studio that you're looking at? Do they match yours? You know, is this something that's going to be a natural fit? Something that you think you want to grow into, perhaps? So yeah, looking at that side of it as well is really important.
Thank you. We actually have questions regarding like the recruitment process. So that leads nicely onto that, actually. So someone asked, how many stages are there? Are there any coding programming activities as part of it? You'd
I
like to
take
answer
that.
Yeah.
It varies a bit, but roughly in our case, it will depend a lot on the specific company. But in our case, we go through usually a first call with our recruitment team where they kind of just kick things off. And then there's going to be a recruitment manager who's going to do the first real interview step and just getting to know the candidate, bit of a more relaxed first stage. Then from there, it goes into the specifics. Let's call it the technical stage. The same thing would apply if it was for other disciplines. But in our cases where we delve, it's longer. We delve more into the specific knowledge the candidate might be bringing to the role. And then it's in that situation where we also do the appropriate test, which again varies depending on the role. And from that point on, if for anyone that goes past the technical stage, we do a final round, which we kind of call it's kind of like a getting to know the team kind of stage, where up to that point it was always relevant people very closely aligned to the role. And then the last stage is a bunch of different people from the studio, doesn't matter their roles, but they're going to just sit down, just chat with you and just see how the person aligns with our studio values, and just is it a good fit for both sides, and then we'll just wrap everything up and come to a conclusion, hopefully a positive one. I think I covered everything.
I think you did. That's nice.
Okay, great. So if someone is successful, what kind of support, coaching, mentoring does your company provide to junior developers or early stage career professionals in the organization?
Do you want me to take that one as well?
That sounds like a you question. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, it depends on the person, but we do have a lot of resources there. There's some organization-wide resources. There's tons of training courses and things like that. But we also try to, for example, we have our internship program starting, and that's like let's call it a super junior version of this. And those interns will have a mentor accompanying them through the entire process. And for any juniors, we would do the same thing, which is making sure that there's someone guiding them to the process. We've had in the past also a bit of a buddy system at times, but it's a very friendly studio, if I can say so myself. So I would say that there's plenty of people that we like to think that everyone feels welcomed and that you can just reach out and chat. And nowadays where everything's going through Slack and Teams and all of that, everyone's just a little distance away on the keyboard. But yeah, we also talking about that, we also try to make sure that when we have junior staff coming in, that we have whoever's mentoring them, and if possible their line manager, to spend some time at the office with them, because it's always at the beginning, it's always nicer in person if possible. Some people who join us are fully remote, but if possible, we like to have a few weeks in person so they can just ground themselves before we move on. Hopefully that was enough.
Yes, there was actually a question in regards to the internship. So Temi Tope, I hope they've answered your question. They were asking what an intern can expect as part of their internship. Hope that answers the question. This is a good one. Yes, it did. Thank you. Great. Is there any opportunities to travel to other PlayStation branches internationally, such as Japan and the US? Have you guys gone abroad?
Yes, there's different situations. In my case personally, I've traveled to visit some of the other studios. So sometimes we just drop by, and obviously COVID was a bit of a spanner in the works there for a while, but we hope to resume that very soon. But just visiting other studios, sitting down with everyone, just talking things through. We also have situations where we have events where we bring people across the studios together to do knowledge share, and also just co-development. I've traveled to Japan on a couple of occasions when I was collaborating on the development of some of the software features for the PSVR headset, and so yeah, plenty of opportunities to travel, I would say.
Great, thank you. Another question was, what is your focus on diversity, or as a whole? What is your organization? What is your focus on diversity? The organization's focus on diversity.
I can take this one. I feel like Bruno's been talking for ages. Yeah, it's really embedded into our studio culture. It's one of part of our studio values is sort of getting sort of better diversity, being a diverse studio. One of the things I really like about the studio is that we incorporate diversity goals into everyone's personal goals throughout the year. So we'll have goals that we set, like career goals, like I want to code this thing, or I want to learn how Kanban works in production. But then we can also have a diversity goal as well. So that encourages every single person on the whole in the whole studio to kind of improve, reach out, do events like this, and just kind of get better, I suppose. I don't know if that answers the question. Hopefully Laura, who is HR, who's in this call, who's watching, approves of this message. But yeah.
I wanted to add to that, actually, we also have, as a Sony level, there's a lot of focus in this area. So we also have something like what we call ENET groups, which is internal groups that talk about specific subjects or try to understand issues that can be in the company, and can be a nice safe place for people to talk about anything relating issues or like discrimination or anything that can be apart from like official like channels and stuff like that. So we have a lot going on. We have events, we have presentations and activities and seminars and panels. So that's a lot that goes on in that regards.
Laura approves of your responses. Okay, great. Someone who was asking, I love this. When you get the job, are you gifted games and a console and kit? Obviously for work purposes.
Not day one, but we do have a games allocation. So when new PlayStation games come out, we first party games, not like every single game out there, but yeah, we get like a voucher for the deluxe digital edition for the game, and usually we at a minimum get a discount on new hardware products, but there have been occasions where we got gifted consoles or things like that.
When you start as well, you get like a swag bag with like lots of really cool Sony PlayStation London Studio branded stuff, some headphones, and yeah, it's fantastic. It's good swag.
That's great. Thank you. And just rounding up, just are you happy for people to connect with you guys on LinkedIn? Yeah? People are nodding yes, so you might get bombarded on LinkedIn. That's fine. Okay, are there any more questions people would like to ask? With just about a few more minutes left. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to also put in the chat, because haven't been able to share anything. Or if Laura can put it in the chat, that'd be great. It's the website for opportunities at the London studios. I'm going to see if I can, yeah, I can get it in the chat.
I saw a nice question pop up.
Yeah, me too.
Oh,
Go ahead,
right.
Patrick.
Okay. So question is, are there other roles that aren't necessarily game design, such as UX UI? And yes, they definitely are roles like that. Both UX and UI don't have to be the same role depending on the size of the company, I guess. But yes, there's definitely roles like that. We have a UI artist. We are hiring, oh, actually we have now UX artists, or you can say artist, but whatever you want to call, UX experience designer. And there's a lot of UX also in game design if you want to be more focused on that. But if you don't want to be a game designer, yes, there's definitely UI art that can be a thing. And we also have a coder, a developer, all coding for our UI rendering system, because someone has to do also that in our engine, because it's custom. So it can be any side of the spectrum of what you think UI or UX is.
Great, thank you, Patrick. Laura's also saying they'll have more junior and mid-level roles opening up from next year. So do keep an eye on the website. Yes, do keep an eye on their website, on our website, because we will be pushing their roles as well. So thank you. So I think that's it, unless there's any final questions that I might have missed. Anyone wants to shout out? No? Thank you. I've got lots of comments. This has been a really good session. Thank you so much. Very informative. People are very happy about the session. So thank you guys very much. I just wanted to, say thank you to the panelists. So Patrick, Bruno, Robin, Angie, and also Louise, the chair. Thank you so much, guys.
Our pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So yes, do look out for other activities we will be doing with PlayStation London Studios in the next few months. And thank you for coming. I will just be here as make sure everyone drops off.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, don't give up. Keep motivated. All right. Bye.
Bye.